Welcome back everyone to today's Love Breakthrough Masterclass. And I'm super excited to talk about something that maybe all of you have experienced, or I'm kind of concerned about what might happen when I actually do meet the one. How do I know if I can trust myself? How do I know if I'm not overlooking red flags or if I'm seeing things through rose-colored glasses? And we've all had these really disappointing relationship experiences that sometimes we get to a place where we just don't even know who or what we can trust anymore. And I'm super excited to be talking with Madeline today. She's going to be sharing a little bit about her story and giving us some amazing insights about how we can actually feel more confident, trust our intuition, and know how to proceed all the way through to a beautiful commitment. Welcome, Madeline. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Peter, I'm super excited to be here with you. Thank you. I'll just quickly share that my passion for this work as a love coach, and particularly supporting women that identify as anxious daters, is because I've been there, done that. And so I really understand what it's like to feel like you're second guessing. And it's like, why am I attracting the same unavailable guy? And what is it about me? So I really understand what it's like, and everything I'm going to share today are things that I've implemented and have used to completely transform my love life and now support clients with. So I always just like to start out by saying I completely get it and I relate. And I also just want to say that if you feel like you're stuck in the same old patterns, there is another way. And what we'll talk about today, and I'm sure, everything that's going on during this event is really going to show you a new path.
What do you see happens a lot with the women in your coaching programs and the women that you're in contact with when they actually do come across a man who is potentially a really good match? And that can actually, as well as exciting as that can be, it can also cause us to be a little bit scared of what the potential, obviously, of getting hurt if it doesn't work out. What sort of things do you see happening in the dating world around that right now?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question, because that's probably the most prevalent thing I see with the women I coach in my community. So I think where women kind of get off track with this is first, expecting that they're going to meet someone that's not going to be a great fit. Maybe that's been their history or their pattern. And so when someone comes along that kind of shakes that up, it's like, wait a minute, what's the catch? Like, when am I going to find something out about him that I don't like? Or when is he going to find something out about me that he doesn't like? And so there's this kind of mistrust and this skepticism of, there's no way this could be what I actually want, which I feel goes back to just that underlying belief system of, is this really possible for me? And I always hear that from women of I really want this and I can't yet fully grasp that this is going to happen. And so when a guy does come along, either there's that kind of skittish reaction of okay, I'm going to kind of tiptoe into it, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Or what's also really common is kind of putting him up on a pedestal and thinking, oh my gosh, no one's treated me this well before. He's so consistent. He's really showing up for me. I think this is it. And then doing what I call, early attaching, where they may be just a couple months into seeing each other, but in their minds, they've already kind of latched on, eliminated other options in dating, have just kind of honed in and said, this is my guy, this is it, I can't imagine anything better. And they're already a few steps ahead in the dating process in their minds compared to what's actually happening. And I've seen that backfire a lot. So I always try to help my clients. Those are kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum. Either pull back from early attaching and really stay in the step that they're actually in, or open up and lean more into it so that they feel like they can fully receive where they're at with a guy without feeling okay, something surely is going to go wrong, because it always does.
It's such a fine line though. How do we know? That's one of the things that I hear a lot of women say, this kind of feels good and he seems to tick a lot of my boxes, but how do I know? How do I know if this is really a good guy and I'm being perhaps too worried or anxious, or if this is just another one of the usual guys that's a player or is emotionally unavailable, masquerading as someone who's really available right now. And we get to that stage where we just don't know how to trust ourselves.
Yeah, I love that question, Peter, because that's really what it comes down to, self-trust. And that is what I kind of hammer home across the board, no matter how it's like showing up and manifesting. So a couple of things I really advocate for. The first is just learning how to self-source your own feelings. I think a lot of times women don't like they think they know how they're feeling, but there's these kinds of like mixed messages and they're not quite sure. And especially if you feel anxious in the dating process, it can feel overwhelming to feel your feelings. So even that very basic process of just like, what am I really feeling? What's coming up in my body? Starting to register those things is going to give you really valuable information that's not just your mind kind of intellectually saying like, well, is this what this person told me I should do? Or I read that it should look like this, right? Like really dropping into your own personal experience and connecting the dots in that way. And then I'm a big advocate of like just being forthcoming with your full self-expression. So many women are terrified of being needy, or they don't want to make the first move. They want to wait to see what the guy does. And there's certainly a place for that. But if you want to see like, does this guy have the capacity to really show up? How available is he? You being self-expressed and not holding back and not feeling like you have to filter yourself is going to give you some really good information. It doesn't mean you have to like, bring everything forward, but it's just like in the moment, can you really share your present moment experience of like, I'm really enjoying myself, or you know what, you shared something last date that I was really hoping we could talk more about today, maybe your relationship history or more about what you're looking for. And I hear all the time that women are afraid of having these conversations. They don't want to come on too strong or whatever. But the more you can just be yourself from the get-go, you're going to clear up a lot of the confusion and have these questions answered, because you're going to then see, oh, maybe he shut down, or he felt like that was too much too soon. Okay, maybe we're not on the same page. Or wow, he really was steady and present and willing to go there with me in these questions, or he really appreciated that I reached out for the first time this time, or whatever. So I think there's little things you can do early on that are going to help eliminate the confusion and the doubt.
I absolutely love that you're really highlighting this to us. And I think particularly from my generation, right, we grew up with books like The Rules, which is, keep your cards so close to your chest, make him chase you, play hard to get. And it becomes so difficult to maintain I guess a connection, or maintain a man's interest, or maintain the attraction in a relationship when you're actually kind of putting forward someone who's not necessarily the real authentic you. And I want to really dive deeper on this point, because if he's not going to love you for who you are right from the start, right, is it worth even trying to be someone who we're not? And I really, let's go deeper on that and really explain to everyone, what does that mean, being authentic?
Yeah, this is so good. This is so important. So I want everyone listening, just pay attention. We do this often, like subconsciously, like this is so human. So as you're kind of like tuning into this, no judgment or shame, it's fine. But just where do you feel like you have to kind of put a filter on? Or it's like, oh, I got to put my best foot forward. We're just getting to know each other. I don't want to show this side of myself yet. I know for me, it was like, okay, I don't want to show my goofy side. I don't want to show whatever. Like I felt like I had to kind of compartmentalize some of those sides of my personality that actually just are who I am. And I love those parts, but I maybe felt like, ooh, that doesn't have a place at the start of the dating process, or I'm so fixated on what he's doing and what he's saying that I'm kind of just reacting to that rather than leading in a sense by bringing all of myself forward. So I always say, like, if you're on a date and something's really funny, can you let out like a really big laugh if that's true to you? If something is genuinely bothering you, or you're confused about, or you have questions about, can you have the courage to bring that forward? It's really looking at, where do you feel like, ooh, if I felt safe here, if I had the certainty that this was going somewhere, if I knew for sure this was my guy, yeah, maybe I would be more forthcoming, more honest, more transparent. I would show more sides of myself. Where do you have that urge or that inclination, and where do you stuff that down? And so I always say as well, like, how would you feel if you were out with your best friend, right? Like, how just relaxed and fully self-expressed would you be? And can you bring that side of you to dating, even from the first date? Like, allow there to not be any compartmentalization of who you are with the people you feel super comfortable with and the people that, you know, the men that you're wanting to make a good impression for, because you being you is a good impression. And yeah, I think there's so many mixed messages out there about you have to look this certain way, or you have to lean back, or you can't show too much too soon. And I really want to take a stand for the belief that the right guy he wants to see all of you. That's incredibly attractive, all sides, even the parts that you maybe have a little bit of insecurity about, or you're wondering if there's like a place for it in the dating process. Yes, absolutely. And the more you can show yourself up front, the quicker you're going to have the information of like, does this work? Does he, you know, do we click together when I'm having like all of my moods or all sides of me, not just this like bright, shiny side where I feel like I maybe have to perform or I have to like put on a face? Like, can I just be me? Because at the end of the day, that's what we all want. And if you can bring that forward up front, you're going to save yourself the experience of getting down the line with someone and inevitably having something that's bothering you, having something that you want to share, wanting that deep connection, and then realizing, oh, like he can't hold it, or now it feels like he's with someone that he didn't know before. Like, you want to avoid that as much as possible by just bringing your full self forward from the get-go.
I so agree. And, you know, I do think that we don't actually give men credit for being able to tell the difference between when we're being really authentic and relaxed into who we are and when we're actually trying to put forward our best self. Because I do believe that they do know, right? I do believe that they can tell, and your best self might actually be someone who's really attractive to them, but they can just tell there's something a little bit off, right? Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's just like we can tell when a guy, we're like, something's just, I can't put my finger on it, but something feels off. Something feels forced or fake. The same is true on the other side. They can pick up on that. And so practice outside of the dating realm, bringing more of yourself forward in your life. And I think you're going to see a huge difference when you are dating, because yes, men are picking up on that. And if you're having the experience of like, wow, I can't make it past the first few dates, or he seems really interested and then he pulls back, this could be a component of what's going on there. So I think we can often be like, well, there's just no good guys left, or everyone's a player, or everyone's unavailable. And maybe there's a part of that. And I always say we have to turn it back on ourselves, never from shame or judgment, but just that place of curiosity to say, is there a discrepancy here in who I really am and how I think I should be showing up, or the parts of me that I think are lovable and attractive, and like that's where I'm leading from, and how can I integrate more of who I really am and bring all of that forward?
The irony is when we meet a man and we pop him in the friend zone, and then it just gives us permission to be unapologetically who we are, because we don't really care what he thinks from a romantic perspective. If you notice that there's such a big difference between who you are when you're around your guy friends and who you are when you're showing up on a date. And it's interesting that often it's the guy friends are the ones that actually love who you are, right?
Totally. Yes. And so, you know, I think that this actually brings us to the second point I was wanting to share today, which is this idea around like, what is your intimacy threshold? And so this is just like a phrase I've started using, but it's really looking at like through the stages of dating, from the first point of contact to, okay, you're a couple months in, you're now exclusive, you're now looking at, you know, perhaps moving in together or traveling or whatever those next steps are after commitment. At what point do things start to feel off for you? So perhaps for some of us listening, it could be, well, like, even from like the first message, I feel like I have to get the exact right words, or I can't text too much, or some of those rules that we hear and latch on to. So that might be the point that you look at, okay, how do I show up more authentically from there? It could be, oh, once things are smooth sailing, we're a few months in, that's when I start wondering, like, when are things going to fall apart? Maybe it's when it's time to have a conversation around like, who are we? What are we doing? Are you seeing other people? And then it's like, I just can't, I shut down. So I just invite everyone to pay attention to, at what point in the dating process do you start to second guess or question? Do you start to lose trust in what's happening? Do you start to kind of maybe revert to, oh, it's 6 months, I've been told it's 6 months, we should be doing this and it's not happening. And kind of like looking for outside sources to inform what should be happening, as opposed to really leaning into the stage you're in and kind of surfing that vulnerability edge for you. So I think I've seen that with every woman I work with, there is some point where things start to kind of go weird. And so if you can identify that for yourself, it's super helpful to know, okay, at this point, that's where I could really kind of double down on my tools so that I can successfully navigate that part and move forward more powerfully.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because a lot of us can actually find a pattern somewhere in our dating, particularly if we've been single for a while and we're sort of having the same dating experiences. It's like, I can't get past the third date, or I can't get past the first date, or I can't get past 3 months, or I can't get past, a certain point. And that often keeps repeating that, right? A lot of women ask me, or feel as though they have a sticky spot when it comes to like the what are we, like where are we, who are we to each other kind of conversation. And I wanted to get your take on when and how, and when that sort of those questions start to come up. How do I know if I should say something now, or I should just lean back and wait it out? If I do say something, how do I approach that conversation? It seems to be a real hurdle in most people's dating experience.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a big conversation. It's a big moment, but I think it's a hurdle because I feel that a lot of women are putting pressure on that moment. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I say something too soon, or if he's on a completely different page, am I going to make him turn around and run? And so where I see women kind of get off track with this is deeply just wanting the clarity. It's it's fine if we're seeing other people. I just want to know where we're at. And it's unsettling when we don't have that just information, that shared understanding. And so I personally advocate for just like, when you're feeling like you want to have that conversation, but with any kind of vulnerable, touchy subject, it's always about the energy and the intention from which it's coming from. And so I think if you can be in a place of non-attachment, of like, if we're somehow on different pages, like that's okay. I can hold myself through that experience. I trust that I can navigate it. I'd rather just know than be in the dark, and I'm going to be okay no matter what. I think that's the key to know it's time to have the conversation. If you're feeling like, I feel so unsettled and so nervous about this, and I just got to know, and like, if he tells me he's not ready to be exclusive, like that's going to be the end of the world. It might be time to do some self-soothing and work on your energy so that you can have that conversation and really be present and hear him and share where you're at and what you're looking for, and not have the anxious energy kind of filtering into the conversation. So I feel like at any point that you're like, yeah, like things seem to be going well, I just want to check in on this, I think that you can go ahead and do that. I don't believe that there has to be like a certain, date time, like 3 months in, 2 months in, whatever. It's just, I think this is part of what we were talking about, of intuition and self-trust, feeling into when it feels right, feeling into when it's like, you know what, it would just be really nice to have the clarity. I feel like, maybe we talked at the beginning that we're both looking for a relationship, but we haven't really touched base since. Like, it's feeling like this might be a good time. With a conversation like this, it's probably never going to feel like the exact right circumstance, the exact right, moment. But that's part of vulnerability, is allowing it to sometimes be a little fumbly, a little bit imperfect. And it's more so just taking a stand for the fact of like, this is information that would help me feel more settled in my life, that would give me more clarity in my life, because I'm moving towards what I want, with or without this guy. Like, if it's with them, perfect, amazing. If for some reason we're not on the same page, would rather know that now. And so it's really kind of coming from that place of empowerment versus I have to know or else. So I hope everyone can kind of see that distinction.
There's two things that I'd really love to unpack from those points that you just, a little bit more from those points that you just shared. The first one is the difference between like trusting our intuition of when feels right for me to have this conversation, versus I'm feeling really insecure, and I don't know if I have any reason to be, if this is my past stuff, but I know that if I have this conversation and I get what I need to hear from him, that'll help me feel more secure. But sometimes, again, we second guess what our intuition is, or whether it's just fears and insecurities creeping in from our stuff, right? The second thing is, after that, let's do a little bit of an unpack on non-attachment as well. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I know this is huge of like, is this just my anxious attachment rearing its head, or is this really a place of like deeper knowing? And what's cool is with feeling anxious in the dating process, there's just always a lesson there. There's always information there. And I help my clients so much with self-soothing, self-sourcing, like really getting in touch with, instead of their feelings being outward focused of like what he is or isn't doing, can you turn it back on yourself and have a deeper internal experience to go a few layers deeper of like, okay, on the surface, I'm feeling unsettled. I'm feeling like I just want some clarity and some certainty. Where is that coming from? Where are we at overall? Like, can I kind of zoom out to the bigger picture to say, is this typically the point in the dating process where I start to feel a little bit unsettled? Or is there a part of me questioning if this is too good to be true? Or is there a part of me, like when I just get quiet, that's like, nope, I just want to know one way or another, because I'm not actually attached to like, this has to be it. I'm more so focused on, I know what I want and I'm moving towards that, and like, come with me or not. And so I think if you can get to that place of like, I'm really acting from my highest vision of, this is the relationship I'm open to co-creating and that's the path I'm on, it's a different feeling. And this stuff is subtle. And so it does require, I think, just a practice around tuning into yourself, going a few layers deeper. That's a different place of like, I'm holding the highest vision for my love life versus I have this, it's almost like a hot potato. It's like, I feel so unsettled that I need to have a conversation. I'm looking outside of myself for those feelings of certainty and clarity. And if I don't have it, then I feel like I just can't, almost can't even function. Like it can sometimes feel that way. So there's a distinction there. And it does take practice to really tune into like, where is this coming from? This desire to have this conversation? What's my real intention behind it? And I think the more we can take that stand for ourselves of like, I am the conscious creator of my love life. I'm acting in alignment with what I really want. And that is above what any man is or is not doing. It gives that sense of confidence. And that's where the self-trust comes in. And it's just like, yeah, okay, so I can have these conversations from a place of greater confidence, because no matter what he says, my decisiveness that I get to have what I want is not dependent on his answer. Like if for some reason we're not aligned, I'm not going to fall apart. It might hurt, it might be disappointing and frustrating and all of that, but like it's not going to get me derailed from where I want to go. And so I think when you can really anchor into that, you're like, okay, cool, I'm good to go. That's like the green light you want to look for as you're having these conversations.
Thank you for explaining that. And I think that's really given all of our audience a better understanding about how to actually handle those situations when they start to feel anxious about or uncertain or insecure about where they stand with someone. Are there any, before we move on to non-attachment, are there any practices or tools that you find are useful for most people in order to help them to really tune in and get clarity around that?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of just inner little girl work, which is something I teach my clients, but essentially just tuning in when you're feeling anxious or unsettled, or you're like, I think it might be time to have this conversation. It's like, what part of me is feeling like that needs to happen? And you can start to make that distinction. Your inner little girl is likely going to feel like this urgency around it of like, it has to happen right now or else. It might feel, your inner little girl might feel like, oh my gosh, if he says no, or we're not on the same page, I'm going to just completely fall apart. I don't know if I could do this again. Your inner little girl might start making a lot of generalizations about like, well, if he rejects me, it's going to be just like every other guy. And it's just going to reinforce the fact that this doesn't get to happen for me. And it's going to likely be the part of you that starts maybe spiraling out. when you can identify that and be like, okay, cool, that's one part of me that is aligned with those thoughts and beliefs and feelings based on childhood, based on past experiences. It's all valid, but I can kind of like put that over here. Then it's like, what else is going on in here? And if you can tap into the part of yourself that even is just like, okay, this might hurt, but I know I will pick myself up. I am choosing to believe that I get to have what I want. It doesn't mean that it's always going to feel like 100% believable. Sometimes that might waver, but it's like, I know that there's a part of me that can re-establish the trust and the belief that I get to have this. That's where you want to like really tune into. And so I help my clients make that distinction, because a lot of times women unknowingly, that inner little girl is in the driver's seat of your love life. And she's calling the shots and she's making the decisions and she's the one thinking and feeling on your behalf. And that's where, if you find yourself looping in patterns, attracting the same kind of guy, we often have to look at, is there a part of you that is feeling unhealed around your love life? Can we love her up and then like kind of, put her in the back seat so that your full, authentic, wise, present day self, the part of you that does believe, the part of you that is tuning into things like this, because on some level, it is possible, right? Like, how do we build her up and get her in the driver's seat and get her moving you forward?
And she does have a tendency to do a lot of the choosing in terms of the men that we're attracted to, right? And I think that's why sometimes we can feel so conflicted through the dating process, because there always is that higher self that has this wisdom, right? But then there's this little girl that's like, no, but wait. And so, I love that you've shared that it is important to actually tune in and listen to both parts and realize where those mixed messages are coming from in order to discern how to move forward. That's really beautiful.
It's so important. And so when you can be like, oh, okay, like that's the voice of my inner little girl, what else is here? Then it's like, okay, I can date and show up and interact with men from this very grounded, empowered place. And I think that's where the real confidence comes from, not just like the facade confidence of like, I'll send the perfect text and get this response, but like, no, the confidence in, I can handle anything that happens. This is meant for me. Like, it's inevitable that I get to have what I want in my love life. Those are really big, life-changing beliefs. And I know it's hard for women to fully anchor into that sometimes. But when you're making that distinction of like, yeah, my higher self is making, like, calling the shots, that's where things really start to open up.
And we all have the ability to access that too, which is incredible. Now, I want to circle back a little bit to a conversation we had a bit earlier where you mentioned showing up and having conversations with potential partners, future partners and men that we're meeting with a sense of non-attachment. And I know that most of our audience have kind of heard of that and understand conceptually what that means in terms of perhaps not placing all of my hopes and dreams on this person and just being prepared to trust in the universe or God or whatever's plan. But what does that really mean, non-attachment? And we'll also talk about like, and how do we get there as well?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Because I know it can be something you hear and you're like, well, but how exactly?
Yeah.
Because the reality is like, we're human, we do have attachments. And so I think normalizing that as well, that yeah, some part of you might be really excited or hopeful about where this could go. And that's okay. So I think sometimes we hear non-attachment and it's like, okay, I can have like zero feelings. I can't get too invested. And it is this fine line where it's like, yes, allow yourself to be excited, allow yourself to be hopeful, allow yourself to be fully present. And you get to do all of that with the understanding of like him or better, And so when you're like, I'm actually more attached to my sense of self and my knowing that what I want is going to happen. And I advocate for that. I empower myself to have these conversations when I feel it's time. It really like shifts things because it's less about attaching to a guy or not. It's more about like, I put myself first and I have the confidence and the courage to have the uncomfortable conversations or be really clear about what I'm looking for or, show these different sides of myself. And I can be non-attached to someone else's reaction or response because I'm so good with myself. I've accepted myself. I know there's something wrong with me. I'm not rejecting myself. And so if someone else is rejecting me, then like that sting is less. The pressure is less. Doesn't mean it's not going to hurt at all, but it just like totally shifts things where you're like, no, like I'm leading myself first in this relationship by bringing everything to the table. And I can trust that the right guy is going to be so receptive to that. And he's just going to want to see more and more and meet me there. It really takes the pressure off so that you're like, okay, cool. I can show up fully no matter what happens. I know that it's in accordance with the best possible outcome because I wouldn't want to be any other way. I can't be any other way, right? It's like this very like self-liberated place of like, this is me and this is what I'm looking for and what I'm available for. And when I own it, I allow more in that aligns with that.
So what you're really talking about there is not having the same degree of fear of rejection. What I've tended to notice is that the fears are almost cumulative, right? Like the longer we've been dating or the more breakups we've had or more relationships we've had, it makes it even more difficult for us to come to a new, even a shorter term relationship and not bring all of those same fears of being hurt and heartbroken.
Yeah. So if you find yourself, it's like, okay, I'm just like entering a new relationship or I'm dating with all of these past fears coming along with me. Something that I encourage my clients to do is a debrief assessment, which it's not like a sexy, exciting thing, but I think it's really important to help you kind of get out of your head and have your emotions be kind of dictating how you're feeling and showing up and really kind of zoom out to the bigger picture. So that's where after a date or at, every so often as you're currently dating someone or at the end of a relationship, it's just kind of reflecting on like, what have I learned? What do I feel like was my part in this outcome? Which is, not always easy to look at, but so important. That's where the growth is. And then it's just kind of like, and what was happening on his end? And when we can kind of like dissect and debrief and it's like, oh, okay, I see. Maybe I wasn't feeling confident and courageous enough to just ask up front what he was looking for. I was kind of hoping like that would come up down the line and like, let's just have fun or whatever. And then a few months in, I realized he's only looking for fun. That's not where I'm at. Shoot. Okay. So maybe the learning here is that, yeah, to save myself from a similar situation in the future, maybe I do ask that question out the gate, even if that feels a little bit uncomfortable. That may support me to not find myself in the same position again. And so we have to look at like, what are the learnings and the opportunities for growth from every situation? But I think it's too often, it's so easy just to be like, well, he hurt me, and just be up in your mind about it, up in your emotions about like, that sucked. I don't want to date again. I'm just hurt. And it's like, yes, feel all those feelings. And what can you do differently next time to have a different experience?
Yeah, okay. So I want to give you a bit of an example because I'd love to hear your advice on this. You've been seeing a guy for a couple of months. Maybe we've had 6 or 7 dates, and then you just feel that he's really pulled away. The normal texting or communication pattern is pretty much stopped. You haven't seen him or heard from him for quite a few days, presuming that the man has actually decided he's done the fade away or the ghosting or whatever you want to call it. Is it in our best interest to try and instigate communication, find out what went wrong, see if we can glean some information directly from him, or just to take his inaction as all the information that we need and kind of walk away with our head held? I guess there's sort of a little bit of conflicting advice about how to handle these kind of ghosting situations. What's your take on it?
Yeah, that's so good. So what I always say when you're kind of at a crossroads of like, do I reach out? Do I try to establish communication, or do I try to just like understand what happened here? What went wrong? Or do I just, pull back completely? I always encourage women to tune in to what is your intention behind any action you're considering and what is the energy around it. And so if, coming back to non-attachment, if you're like, I've accepted this isn't how I want to be treated in a relationship, or I've realized this doesn't feel good anymore, and I'm not actually super interested in continuing with him. But I'm just genuinely curious, like, what happened here? What is going on? If you can have that detachment around, there's no guarantee you're going to hear back from him, or there's no guarantee you're going to like what he has to say. If you know that you can hold yourself through any potential outcome with reaching out and him responding or not, you're not like hinging your sense of self-worth onto that, or your certainty that you get to have what you want. Like, if you can be like, yeah, let's just see what happens, but no matter what, it's fine, I would say go ahead. If it's the idea of reaching out and potentially not hearing back, or hearing something that you think is really going to rock you, I would say that's probably a time to not take the action and actually go within and work with your feelings and emotions, um, and let that just kind of be. So I know, like, I feel like there's not a cut and dry, you always have to do this in this situation. I think it's more nuanced than that. And making that distinction for yourself around, what is my intention? What am I really trying to accomplish here? How am I feeling about this? It's going to help you discern. It's going to help you build that sense of self-trust, because rather than looking at like, oh, I've heard you should always reach out, or you should always lean back, it creates that confusion inside of like, but what if I genuinely do want to know? Or what if I think we could benefit from me reaching out? I want you to more so focus on what is going on within you, where are you trying to go with these actions, and making those decisions for yourself, understanding the difference and distinguishing how you're feeling and how any action is going to impact that.
Really, really powerful advice, especially for so many of us that can feel so uncertain, right? During the, and like I was sitting in the cafe the other day, and I was overhearing two girls both talking about their dating love life situations, both trying to get advice from each other, potentially good advice, but maybe not necessarily. And I think the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from our conversation today, and I hope that all the girls understand this as well, is that to really, really trust their own intuition, trust what feels right for them, instead of needing to try and get confirmation and validation from outside, right?
Absolutely. That is the biggest point I hope everyone is walking away with. And I know it can feel like, but how? But like, I totally get it. And I would say honing your intuition, building your self-trust, it's a never-ending process. But just, again, a really simple place to start that is also ongoing is just at every decision-making point in your love life, whether it's like, do I feel ready to go online and make a profile? Do I want to text this guy first? Do I want to, have this conversation? Always just tuning in to like, where is that desire coming from? How am I feeling about any potential consequence or action that comes from it? And you're going to have those answers. But I think we're so kind of conditioned to look outside of ourselves. We're like, yeah, what do my girlfriends think? What does this expert think? And I really want to encourage everyone, like, you always have the answers within. The more you can practice going within, tuning in, listening, you're going to more easily be able to discern and distinguish and make decisions that are coming from a place that feel like truth for you, versus just like reaction or kind of knee jerk, like, have to resolve this feeling, like this feels so uncomfortable to feel anxious, for instance. So I just got to reach out and like get it over with. You want to start paying attention to when you're making decisions from that place, and when it's like, nope, like I feel a sense of calm, I feel a sense of clarity, certainty. That's what you want to be looking for.
And you want to be able to go and date and have fun, like literally just relax and have fun, right? And when we're so worried about this or that or what's happening and second guessing ourselves and all of that, I think it just really stops us from being able to just relax and actually enjoy and allow that connection to unfold as it should. If you want to find out how you can connect with Madeline, all of the information about her bio and other extra bits and pieces, it's all linked up down below the video. So take a moment and check all of that out. But you actually have a couple of things we're going to share now. One is an audio that we can now go and listen to get an even more of an experience of you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's a brand new breathwork meditation audio. I lead you through a couple exercises that are super quick and very powerful It's going to help clear any anxious energy. And so this is actually perfect for what we're talking about, because if you're faced with a big decision of like, where do I go from here? What's next? I encourage you, like, pop on this audio, go through these exercises, and it's going to help you drop into your intuition more easily. And it's also just going to give you that clarity of, yes, this is what I want, and now I know how to take action on it. So we have that. And then I also have a free masterclass that is going to share just more tools and resources about everything we've been talking about today.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. And I love that we're able to share such practical tools for the girls to go away and experience right now, and definitely jump onto Madeline's masterclass and make the most of really understanding this work even more deeply. Thank you so much, Madeline. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think, what we've been talking about, this has been such an amazing conversation, and it may feel like, oh gosh, I'm so far from this, or wow, my anxiety really is running this show right now. And I just want to remind everyone that all of the tools and practices we've been sharing, it's a practice, and so it's okay if right now you're feeling like that, what we've talked about feels a little bit distant or far away. The more you can make this a way of being just in your day-to-day life, the easier it gets. And it's just an ongoing daily practice of tuning in and then acting accordingly. So if you find yourself really anxious right now, like I shared at the beginning, I'm my first success story in overcoming that. So I know it is possible for you. And I'm so glad you're here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Madeline. Looking forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Bye for now.